the weather's really not very nice at all. It's really windy and it's raining. So I hope it's manageable for him. It's sort of not a great combination, but it doesn't look like it's going to do it all day. It just looks pretty miserable at the moment.
I started this project for a number of reasons. One was for my own fitness, because I thought building up to 200 kilometres and then doing it every month for a year and perhaps longer term, hopefully, was a good way to build fitness and then sustain fitness because of the monthly requirement to do a challenging ride. Also as a learning process, because part of my ability as a coach comes from my personal experience. As a story to inspire others, because if I can do it, you could probably do it. As a worked example in looking at my experiences, how I've trained for this goal, how I've struggled in certain areas, like my struggling with recovery and fatigue, and how I've come through those things, hopefully, to be successfully riding these 200 kilometre rides and perhaps longer rides as the weather improves in the summer. And the great thing about cycling or any endurance sport is it gives you an excuse to go to new places, experience new places, and not least of which, as a personal experience as I go through the journey of developing fitness, doing the rides, suffering through these longer rides and coming through the other side, hopefully a better and more mindful, experienced person.
Finally the rain stopped, the sun's come out. There's still quite a chilly wind, but hopefully this weather's a bit more pleasant for him. And we're into the new loop of his route. So when he did his last long route, his 100 miles, I can't remember how many kilometres that is, he didn't do this bit of the ride, so this is all new, which sometimes can be a bit nice and sometimes it's a bit daunting, but ultimately he's got a little bit of a new loop to do, and then the rest of it he knows, and somehow that can be easier to break down. And we purposefully did that with the last ride. We sort of made sure that we included some of his long 200k. I think it makes a big difference. It gives you loads of confidence. And as I say, when you get to the bits that you know, you feel, all right, okay, I've got this, this and this to do, and you know exactly what it is, you can break it down in your head.
So this is I don't know, 8th out of 9 climbs. The sun came out and I got to the turn, and I naively assumed that the wind would be behind me for the return journey, given it had been in my face for the outward journey. And it's been generally a lot better, so hopefully I'll get to the end now.
So far it's working really well in all those respects. I really like the defined goal, and I like the fact that I've got a lot of control over my success or failure, because my success really is defined by my ability to ride at a certain speed and not stop, not give up. And that in itself is quite challenging, but it's well defined and it's something that I'm pretty much in control of. Whether I can do it or not is a different story. The process of building fitness for these longer rides has been very different to what I've done in the past. In the past I've trained for shorter race events where you're trying to go as fast as you can or race against competitors, and sometimes you have to work really hard to stay with somebody. Whereas the training is to build up to be able to ride at a certain speed that is adequate, and it doesn't really matter how fast you go as long as you finish before the time limit. And although that might seem the same and I'm doing quite similar training, the nuances are a little bit different and the feelings are different for me. The feeling during the events is different as well, and I'm finding that very difficult to put my finger on and explain, so I'll perhaps leave that for a later video. But it's certainly nice to have these different challenges and different experiences.
It's putting out some good power. He's a bit worried about the power he's putting out, but I think he should be okay. He's tapered quite a lot, so you quite often find that you can put out a bit more on the day. And I think it's just having to do it.
During the rides themselves, it's about managing energy and discomfort within your personal space. It's not about reacting to what other people are doing, because you've all got almost complete control, apart from the weather and the terrain, of how you do in the event, and you can control your pace as you need to. You can't really do a lot about your pace during the event. You seem to have a sort of sustainable pace, and that is your sustainable pace. If you try harder, you probably have to go slower to recover, and as a consequence your actual average pace might be a little bit slower if you go too hard early on and then have to slow down. So you've got this set pace, and then the variables are whether you can keep going at that pace or whether you have to stop more frequently, or whether and how much discomfort you can handle if you've got pain at the various contact points. You can obviously go slower than this sustainable pace, but that can be pretty counterproductive because it means you're on the bike for longer, and as a consequence you're actually perhaps making the ride harder by going slower because you just sat down suffering for a bit. So I'm finding this sustainable pace fairly easy to manage, but it's quite hard to keep doing it. And that's really the problem, is the sustaining the effort and not stopping, or not stopping for very long and things like that, which is a very different challenge for me.
Oh, so come here, Fernie. John's on the last leg. We're just waiting for him at a little place called derailed, which is about 20 miles from the end. Really amazed at how he's done actually, because the weather's not been that easy. It has been sunny, but it's been really windy and gusty as well. It's just really hard, you know, with cycling. And one of the things that I was thinking about actually when I was driving over to here is that, well, one thing is pretty tough in general, but in sport particularly, it's really tough. You'll just keep going. And the other thing is, you know, he has got a long history of doing really long, hard things, right from being quite a young teenager and doing these ultra runs. So, you know, he is a good machine at doing long stuff. I think this could be. So I'm pleased he's taken up these RRtY because I think it's something that he can be really good at and something that he can enjoy. He does love being out and about and on his bike. And I think that is the key for long endurance stuff. You really need to love what you do, because you're going to be spending an awful lot of time doing it, training and then in the actual event. And if you don't love it, then all the stuff that makes it difficult will just make you want to give up. So I think some key ingredients really that John has is this toughness, this Yorkshire grit, if you will, this history, long history of doing long endurance events, and a real love for the sport. And I think if you've got those three things, then you're away really, even if it really hurts, you can be determined to carry on to the end. So looking forward to seeing him come through here, and looking forward to seeing him at the end as well. Thank God it's sunny now.
So for the ride itself, it was the outward leg that I knew was the crux of it, because the 100 kilometre point was about the highest point, and I knew that the outward ride was predominantly into the wind. As it turned out, the return journey wasn't completely with the wind, but it was predominantly downhill and predominantly with the wind. So I knew that if I could get to 100 kilometres, I was probably okay, as long as I got to 100 kilometres within a reasonable time. And as it turned out, I got to the 100 kilometre point with an average speed of about 19.5 kilometres an hour. So I knew that I might pick up a bit of time on the way back with the wind and downhill. So I was sort of working roughly on an average speed of 20 kilometres an hour, and then maybe some stops. So that was about 10 hours. So that meant I had 3 hours to play with to meet the cut-off time. At almost exactly the 100 kilometre point, I turned to be with the wind, and also the sun came out. It stopped raining and stopped being so cloudy. And I had actually suffered quite a bit over that 5 kilometres, 95 kilometres to 100 kilometres. That was perhaps the hardest part of the ride for me. But then when I turned, I was with the wind. I stopped and took a bit of gear off and had a bit of a sit down for 5 minutes or so. And then I thought, oh, this is okay. But then, of course, it turned to be back into the wind and a little bit of a gradual climb. But anyway, I still felt a lot better because I'd had that short break. All the climbing wasn't over at that point, but there was quite a long way to the final couple of climbs. The final couple of climbs were quite hard, and much harder than I'd expected. I expected to be able to get over them reasonably comfortably, which I had done in the 100-mile test ride that I'd done. But it wasn't a question of whether I would not be able to do it or not. It was just a question of it was a bit more uncomfortable. The problem I'd had with the left hand, I had a numb left hand in previous rides. That wasn't such a big issue, maybe because I'd used aero bars to give myself a bit of a break from there. But I don't know, it might just be that I'm getting a bit better at sitting on the bike for a long time. The final 30 kilometres were fairly flat, but I'd had enough at that point, but I just kept spinning the pedals, and because it was a predominantly following wind, I was fine at that stage. And I also knew I had these 3 hours in hand, because at that point I was averaging about 20 kilometres an hour. So the ride went really well, and in general the training's gone really well. I've done a lot less training than I anticipated. I've had to take a lot of recovery, particularly early on, where I was struggling to maintain any sort of training volume. Clare's helped me manage that really effectively and held back that tendency that most of us have to do too much, because resting it's counterintuitive that resting actually makes you better. But that's when your body adapts, and it's been amazing how my body's adapted from doing really only 3 long rides to build this endurance fitness. And also I'm riding a bit faster as well, I think. This ride was slower, but my average power was much the same and my normalised power was much the same. So all I can assume is that the wind was what was slowing me down. Well within the time limit, and you know, all went really well. So I'm interested to see how things go next. Obviously I'm going to do another 200 kilometre ride in January. That's set for the 20th of January, assuming the weather's reasonable. I'm going to have a crack at the Strava 500 over the Christmas period, see how that goes, and then after February we'll see what develops. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you find it useful. Please let me know what you might find interesting, what aspects are interesting to you. I hope you find it inspiring and helpful in your own fitness journeys. If you want to join in, it'd be great. It's great to have people along. Make some comments, join our Facebook page. We've got a discussion group, Facebook discussion group, Strava club, all this type of stuff. And if you want to join more formally, we've got the EBR Cycling Club, which is a really good group of like-minded people which get together on a Monday nights for the workshops where we learn from each other. And that comes with a training plan and various other stuff. And if you want us to coach you, if you want to work with Clare or myself, we've still got some slots available to take you to the next level of fitness and help you achieve your goals in the future. Actually having a coach and working with a coach interactively makes a huge difference, as hopefully you're starting to see with this journey. Even though I'm very knowledgeable about training and building fitness, having Clare as an objective helper to guide my training and keep me on track is probably the reason that it's been so successful to now. I'm not sure I would have actually managed the 200 kilometres so quickly if it hadn't been for her help. I might have been, you know, lying at the side of the road exhausted at some point. Please join in whatever way works for you, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.